Hey everybody, it's Mr. Mott. What I want to do is talk about our Isotopes of Pennies lab. So first of all, a couple things to note about pennies is that before 1982, they were mostly made of copper. After 1982, or actually sometime during 1982, they changed to where they have mostly zinc and just a thin layer of copper on the outside. And what that means for us is that the older pennies versus newer pennies, they weigh different amounts, even though they're both worth the same amount of money. So in this lab, we're going to use that idea to talk about isotopes. Isotopes are elements or atoms that are the same identity, for instance, like copper or chlorine, but they have different, some of the atoms have different masses. So we're going to kind of learn about that. First thing I asked you to do is find the mass of one older penny, and they weigh about 3 grams. When we find out the mass of a newer penny, they're about 2.5 grams. And so what we're going to do is think about, what if we had a mixture of pennies, a mixture of 10 total pennies, and what would that mass look like? So in our table here in sample 1, if we had 10 old pennies, the mass of 10 old pennies would be 10 times our 3 grams, and that's going to equal 30 grams. If we don't have any new pennies, then that's going to be 0. When we take our mass of our old and our mass of our new and add them up, it would be 30 grams. And then our last step that we would do is figure out our average mass. Now, since they're all the old pennies, I'm going to take my total mass, which is 30 in this case, divided by 10, and that's going to equal 3 grams. Now, when we have a mixture of pennies, like we will for samples 2, 3, and 4, it gets a little bit more complicated, but not too much. But it's the same idea. So in sample 2, if we have 8 old pennies, we're going to take 8 times the 3 grams, and that's going to be equal 24 grams. If we have 2 new pennies, we're going to take 2 times the mass of our new pennies, and that's going to equal 5 grams. And so then if we add up 24 plus 5, we get 29 grams as our total. And then so we're going to take our 29 grams divided by 10, and our average mass is 2.9 grams. And so the idea is that none of our pennies have a mass of 3 grams, or excuse me, none of our pennies have a mass of 2.9 grams. They're either 3 or they're 2.5. And so with this average mass, it represents the mass of the mixture. And that's really the idea that we do for sample. If we have 5 of each, I'm going to take 5 times my mass of my old pennies, so that's going to equal 15 grams. If I take my 5 new pennies, 5 times 2.5 is going to equal 12.5 grams. When we add up 15 plus 2.5, we get 27.5 grams. And our average mass would be 27.5 divided by 10, which is going to equal 2.75 grams. And that's the average mass of our mixture of pennies. All right. So that's the idea in our penny lab. And what we can do then is to be able to use this sort of same idea to figure out what a mixture of different pennies would weigh, even if we weren't able to count them out. And that's kind of what we have for our next pieces. All right. So that's sort of the idea. If we, again, at the top here, we wrote down our mass of our old penny is 3 and our new penny is 2.5 grams, we can sort of predict what the mass of a different mixture would be. So let's say that we look at this mixture of 4 old and 6 new pennies. We could actually predict what the mass would be, and then also the average mass. So if I have 4 old pennies, I'm going to take 4 times my mass of an old penny, which is 3 grams, and then I'm going to take my 6 new pennies, so 6 times 2.5 grams, and let's see, 4 times 3 is 12, and then 6 times 12, or 6 times 4 times 3 was 12. 6 times 2.5 is equal to 15. So then added that up, we would predict that if we had 4 old pennies and 6 new pennies, that the mass would be about 27 grams. And so that's 4 old, 6 new. Predicted mass would be 27 grams. And then in lab, what we did is that we would actually measure and like put 4 old pennies and 6 new pennies on a scale and see what that would be. All right. For our average mass, we would take the actual mass that we have and then just divide it by 10 to get that value. All right.